Hi there, I'm Richard Hill, the host of eCommerce One, and welcome to episode 194. Now in this episode, I speak with Mark Adams, General Manager at BigCommerce, and Roosevelt Santos, Senior Product Manager at Recharge. We chat all things composable and the detailed process of replatforming, internationalisation and launching into 180 countries, and how BigCommerce works with retailers to ensure a smooth transition. And the big one, reducing cost of ownership. And of course, so much more in this one. So if you enjoy this episode, hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you are listening to this podcast, so you're always the first to know when a new episode is released. Now, let's head over to this fantastic episode. Hi guys, how we doing?
Doing good.
Good. Fantastic. Well, thanks for coming on the show. I think before we kick off and get into the nitty-gritty, I think it'd be great for you guys to introduce yourselves and how you got into the world of e-commerce. So if you want to go first, Mark, that'd be great.
Yeah, so Mark Adams, I'm the General Manager for BigCommerce here in Europe. Look after all of our go-to-market teams, sales, partnerships, customer success, professional services. I've been in e-commerce for most of my career, actually. Originally working in my own agency, from kind of the early 2000s, just really the dawn of e-commerce, and technology was, of course, very different back then. Lots of very complex projects and systems that we had to integrate. And then spent some time kind of doing consulting for brands on technology strategy and PE companies around acquiring technology businesses. And then more lately, at BigCommerce in 2018, I set up the team here in Europe. I was the first person hired on the ground as CEO, and then went away to be CEO of another tech e-com company and came back but just over a year ago. I'm very
you couldn't keep away.
I couldn't.
Yeah, fantastic. You've sort of seen it all then, I guess. Obviously working in your own business, working in your own agency, then working for different tech companies that were working with different sort of brands. And then obviously leading in Europe on BigCom. So yeah, lots to dive into. Thank you for that, Mark. Roosevelt, if you want to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Yeah, of course. And thank you for having me. So I'm Roosevelt. I'm a Brazilian living in Amsterdam for a year and a half. I've been working in tech for about 15 years, since the dawn of iPhone, actually. That's a really important moment that changed how we work in tech, actually, and change a lot of the retail experience for all the world, right? And Recharge is a company that has transformed the way traditionally offline market works with payment cards and gift cards, currently present in 180 countries. And I've been basically leading our efforts in platform and customer experience. And it's been really a great experience being here. And about 8 months ago, we start working with BigCommerce, with Mark and his team, to add BigCommerce to our platform stack, looking always to improve for the future and the increasing demands of the market.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thanks for that, guys. So I think the best way to dive in, obviously you sort of said there, you started working with BigCommerce and Mark and the team sort of 8 months ago, but I guess it'd be good to sort of step us back sort of prior to that. What made you sort of make the decision or what were sort of the key factors that led to working with BigCommerce? Why did you choose BigCommerce as your sort of, as part of your stack?
As a Recharge, we are always looking at how to improve our platform for the future. As I mentioned, the market is always evolving. The demands from the user are always evolving. Users want things even faster than before. They want speed in everything. They want a great experience. The demands from experience 10 years ago were very different than the demands that we have today. And looking for that, we're always looking for solutions that allow us to do this faster. And having a solution like BigCommerce with really great API documentation and solid solutions for part of what we want to improve allow us to do innovation even faster.
So I think there's a lot of talk in the industry and a lot of talk around sort of composable and sort of that sort of modular future proofing. Was that a big part of why you chose BigCommerce as well?
Definitely. As I mentioned, BigCommerce, we started this conversation actually about a year ago. When I started leading the efforts for the whole platform, I was looking for where we can make our platform even better. And then you always find different opportunities. But then you want to find that in a way that you can, in the future, continue to replace the small pieces, decompose the architecture, so you can always continue to innovate. But you also want to leverage what is already done in the market, so you can spend more time in what is a really true differentiator for your business. In our case, for our customers in prepaid solutions. So looking at that, we start a procurement process to understand the tools in the market to solve what we wanted, with a really big list of criteria. And after 4 months, the result is that BigCommerce was the best fit for what we needed. And we could easily integrate our solutions into our stack to solve the problems. Not the problems, but to improve the things that we wanted to improve in our stack in a faster way. So it was really, and has been a really great experience. Having Mark and the team aboard is really almost an extension of our team. We are very close working together in implementing, testing the solutions, and make sure we have a fast go-to-market.
So I think what springs to mind straight away will be there'll be a lot of people listening, a lot of people that are a lot of merchants, owners, marketers, people that have got to make these decisions to re-platform or, to add, elements and grow the business. You talked about that procurement process. Can you maybe step through a couple of key areas of that procurement process that sort of led to it being successful? Because I think, a lot of people are not quite sure where to start. There may be, a lot of clients we speak to are sort of, they may be at the 20, 30 million mark turnover. That's a lot of people we speak to. And then they're like, right, we want to, they've got this vision to do, whether it's 50, 100 mil. But they maybe don't know what they don't know is the reality. They don't quite know what is out there, what, they're within their bubble of, connections and the market they're in and the experience that team's got. So, they might be asking the wrong questions, for example, and not really thinking, future-proofing. So maybe step us through that procurement process and what were some of the key things in that process that you think led to a successful sort of partnership with BigCommerce?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. And I think the most important thing, if I can highlight one, would be to tap in the shared knowledge that you have inside the company. At Recharge, we have a really great team in different departments, people from different backgrounds for more than 40 countries with different perspectives in life as well, and how to use the solution. That really have a lot of experience inside the company. We have people with 5, 10 years in the company. We also have people with 5 months, 15 months, a year. So they can bring so much to the table to understand different perspectives on the user's problems, on how to see the market. So I think the big first step that you can do is to really go around the business talking to people about how we see the opportunities. Of course, we have to prioritize what are the main opportunities we have, but around that, I like to first, in a really product way, explore things. So make a broader understanding of what is happening and what are the options, what are the solutions, and understand what can have more impact for the business as well. And once you do that, during the procurement process is about having those criteria, then it's a time to go into the detail of how those items, those things that you found can be measured against solutions in the market. And even before that, it is actually nice as well to have a first conversation with the biggest players in the market. That's what I did. So I basically looked at the market reports on the biggest players. Of course, BigCommerce was there. And just start a conversation first to understand what the platforms they are there offer, because that can also be a source of insights. And once you gather this, again, I use the team to understand, that's actually something interesting. And then I came up with a list of criteria of things we know we need based on the data that we have on the users, the market, how they use the systems, and how what we want to improve, but also things that can be a good opportunity. And then I basically give different weights for those criteria. and I start talking with the vendors and assess these points. And it's a really long process. And we had basically a committee inside the company to go through every question. So we did reference checks, we did technical assessments, we trialed the APIs and the solution before. So every aspect that was important for us. What is the SLA for customer service? How would work the partnership once we sign the contract? What are the real limits? Everything was a very long, important process that we went in the details of everything to make sure it was a great fit for what we need, because it's a partnership that we want to be a partnership for a long time. We're always looking to improve, and we needed a solution that can grow together with us. We don't want to make partnerships with things that we're going to last just for 6 months. We want a long term.
So from the moment you decided that obviously you were looking for a new partner to making the decision to work with, how long was that process before you sort of, right, this is the one? How long was that?
It was about, we started in August, the conversations internally. I believe in September we start reaching out to companies. And I believe we signed the contract actually on the 21st December last year.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just before Christmas. Nice little birthday present for Mark.
Exactly.
Oh, fantastic. That was a very, very thorough response there. Thank you very much for that. I thought that was, I would say to the, I think a lot of people that listen, it's sort of, they're milling this over, this process, and just the thought of, the implications of some of the decisions you've got to make are obviously huge, so I think you broke that down really, really, really detailed, but I like the idea of, really bringing in different people from the team. It sounds obvious, but obviously people that have been there, maybe not that long, that have got fresh ideas, have come from other, depending on what business you're in, other parts of the industry, other parts of, obviously if you're listening as a merchant, which most people are, there's a lot of different experience in the team. The people that have been there a long while, although they've got a lot of experience, they might also have a very, very, how can we put it, a very fixed focus, a very fixed opinion on things, whereas fresh ideas, bringing that through and then consolidating that down into a hit list. And as you mentioned right at the beginning, I mean, I think you're in 180 countries, aren't you? That must have been a big part of the decision, because obviously I'm very aware of how very good BigCommerce is in multi-currency, multi-language. Was that a big part of the decision?
Definitely. That's a critical part of the decision in the business. I think it's a big differentiation that we have from other players in the market, that we made a deliberate choice to be multi-language, multi-currency. We want to offer the best solution in a global scale with a local experience.
Yeah. I think that's where the huge leverage, isn't it? Where it's one of the biggest levers we see with merchants that we work with. Typically, they come to us with maybe 2 or 3 countries enabled, or 3 or 4 different feeds in different countries on different platforms. But obviously, you can multiply that very quickly when you sort out your multi-currency, multi-country, multi-feed. So, Mark, obviously, you've been working with Roosevelt on this project, and the team have. Is this a sort of typical project for you guys? I mean, I think when we talk about Composable, how much of a focus is that for you and your team at the moment?
A huge approach. But before we get into that, I want to pick up on something Roosevelt was talking about, the ways of working and how they work with us, because I think that is genuinely really interesting. At Recharge, they've got their own internal IT organization. They're not using an agency to go and deliver that. Round about 1/5 of our projects are of that nature, where the customer is doing the development internally themselves. And for us, often that's one of the most challenging use cases, because lots of companies don't do these types of projects every single day. They don't have the ways of working, the approaches, the project governance to be able to pull this off successfully. When projects go really well, it is because of the culture of the organizations involved, the dedication of the various people, and the alignment of various people from all parties. And that's clearly something that Recharge just have in their DNA. They know how to deploy technology. a lot of retailers, for example, are not often typically great at that, and so projects can be challenging. We were launching the first site, I think Roosevelt, correct me if I'm wrong, within kind of 2.5 months in Ireland, and so it's been very rapid.
Wow.
Lots of collaboration. We work very closely together. We have our services people within the project as well, and that is particularly with a composable project, which is highly technically complex. That kind of culture is very helpful. It makes it the chances of success are clearly higher. I mean, on composable, it's interesting, as I mentioned, when I first got into e-com, that's how everything was developed. I mean, there was no big platform that did everything back in early 2000s. You bought content management, you bought search, you bought an e-commerce platform, and you had to plug it all together yourselves. And it was complex, difficult, challenging.
I remember well.
and very, very, very costly. And I think that is, with where composable is today, particularly with BigCommerce, our strategy is not only to, create the agility through composable, allowing our customers to pick the best-in-class technologies and approach that they want to take to customer experience, but also the way that they deploy that technology. That's often the key. It's not just picking the technologies. Are they pre-integrated?
Yeah.
Are the APIs available? Do they match? And is it going to be easy to actually pull that off? And is the architecture going to be correct for what the customer's trying to achieve? So there's lots of moving parts in composable. And at BigCommerce, what we're trying to do is simplify those moving parts. We want to make composable easy, simple, as we possibly can. So we're doing a lot of the heavy lifting ourselves around this. And then, of course, the customer has to have the right strategy. They have to understand how those tools and technologies are going to be used by their business users in particular, and how it's going to be deployed by the technical teams. And again, what we're trying to do is move away from technical intervention to manage composable to business user management. And that's our journey, and we'll talk about that in terms of our roadmap a bit later. But I think that's the key to making composable successful. You look at the biggest failed projects in our industry in the last 3 or 4 years. It's because the customer was trying to do composable, but they weren't really given a roadmap to help them do that, and they were having to learn on the job and make really difficult decisions. And
it just wasn't connected. They got the sort of business to platform, but there's not that middleman, if you like, and that middle connector, which is obviously something you guys are super strong at. Yeah. So obviously, Mark, Roosevelt, Mark from obviously working with a lot of different merchants, a lot of different use cases, and obviously Roosevelt, a very strong business, growing year on year. What are some of the trends you're seeing right now in Roosevelt in your industry, but Mark in the industry as a whole, that sort of successful merchants are sort of embracing and doing well with? What are some of the things you're seeing at the moment?
Now, you might be looking for an SEO boost, a down-to-earth digital PR campaign to share your story, or maybe just some straightforward technical help to amp up your performance. Now, that's where eCom Now comes in. A partner that's all about making things easier for your online store. Our services cover everything from creating professional content for your e-commerce categories to refining your product descriptions. Now, whether you're just starting out or have been in it for a while, we're here to deliver real, impactful results that add to your bottom line without unnecessary commitments. You can order one-off or multiple projects with a quick turnaround. Simply choose what you need.
Well, we've talked about composable. Around about, close to 30% of all of our builds now are composable, and in larger enterprises, virtually all of them are composable. So that is definitely a trend that we're seeing. I think more broadly right now, there are two key. How do I grow sales faster? How do I ensure that I grow them profitably? And therefore, how do I manage that e-commerce infrastructure to be able to go and do that? So cost of ownership is being looked at very carefully by boards at the moment. Investment decisions are being scrutinized like never before. I mean, even going back to kind of I remember 2000, 2008, 2009, that's the last time where I felt we were in a kind of a macro economy where there were that many headwinds, and it was that challenging, and the decisions were scrutinized in kind of the same way. And so, for a brand, for a retailer, for an organization on this journey, they've got to marry vision and strategy. They've got to manage that from a cost perspective, and at the same time, they've got to grow sales profitably. That's a really tricky conundrum to solve. Those three things all at the same time. So I think for leaders like Roosevelt, it is particularly challenging. So what I would say, you need good partners. You need partners that have got the expertise, the experience, that have been on that journey many times to help you and to lean in. You need good leadership in the company. And I come back to kind of project delivery. The trends I often see related to that is because of the nature of SaaS over maybe the last 10 years and plug and play, often customers have lost the ability to manage IT projects successfully. Back 10, 12 years ago when I was doing this in my agency, a lot of customers had project management teams. They were doing this all the time because that's the way technology worked. They had to. Well, SaaS has introduced an easier way to deploy technology and manage it. And then some of the kind of the governance and perhaps the ways of working we spoke about earlier, that gets lost as things get easier. But when you get into different situations and complex projects, the customer needs those skill sets, and oftentimes we don't always see that. And the most successful deployments of technology happen when the customer understands really what they're getting themselves into and what they need to do, and they know how to manage their technology agencies, their partners, etc. So a trend to kind of at the customer to reinvesting those types of things is something else we're also seeing. Of course, AI everywhere at the moment. It's still being talked about an awful lot, and to some extent a lack of genuine use cases that are highly successful. But yeah, it's definitely.
What's a couple of things you guys are doing with AI? I mean, I was at your partner summit a few months ago, and obviously there's a few things there. But what's BigCommerce doing with AI now that our listeners should be aware of?
A few things. So we're launching Big Copywriter, which is basically the tool that will help product merchandisers and content writers produce product descriptions and other forms of content out of the box. So that's kind of speed, time.
That's most merchants' pain in the bottom, isn't it? Right, you got another 10,000 SKUs to write about. Oh, you're joking.
And then using AI to optimize that product description for the channel in which the data is being consumed, the marketplace, the social channel, the ad channel. A lot of work is going on in our product around that at the moment. What else? Search and merchandising. So we're leveraging Google's AI technologies in this area to improve search and semantic search capabilities and merchandising capabilities and recommendations. To name a few. There's a few other areas, but those are the main ones right now that we're focused on. The ones that are going to allow our business users to, do more with less.
Yeah. No, thank you, Mark. Roosevelt, what are you seeing at the moment?
Yeah, what we have seen in our space, and it's true for a lot of spaces actually, current customers have always entered products quickly. And I think that becomes even more relevant in the times that we are now. The speed of the internet improved so much in the last 15 years. Mobile in everybody's pockets, AI as well. And so for us, a recharge, looking at the speed of delivering the digital products that we sell has been always relevant to provide the best experience for the user. And that comes again, a relevant aspect to having a partner that can really truly deliver a fast solution and also a fast partnership as well. As Mark was saying, we had cases that we made really quick decisions together, like an extended team with BigCommerce. And that is really helpful to, like I said before, is speed the time that we can deliver innovation. And it's really important for the business to be quick to respond to this market and customer demands. So I think that's a really, really relevant aspect to add to what Mark brought.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think the innovation piece, speed, so everything seems to be speed, doesn't it? I mean, you talked about, I've just sort of been, I wouldn't say backpacking. That wouldn't be quite true, but going from middle of nowhere in Southeast Asia, with different internet connections, and just keeping it was a bit of a test for me, for my. For me, I run a behind the podcast, as I think most of our listeners know. There's a an e-commerce marketing agency, and I try to. We've been building that in a way that it's obviously we do have an office and we do have a physical location where is our HQ, but we have people scattered, all over the world that work for the company, and my passion is travel, so I try to spend sort of 3 or 4 or 5 months traveling around and. We went to a lot of places in the middle of nowhere, basically, in Southeast Asia, and just sort of keeping in contact with everybody. And it's just incredible, I think, now. I mean, it has been for many years, really. But, I think my internet here in the office in the UK is probably the worst internet that I've encountered after living in on a almost, I was literally in a paddy field for 2 weeks, a couple of weeks ago in literally the middle of nowhere, and it was just lightning fast everywhere. It's crazy sort of what is out there and what can be done, and and the amount of people that obviously work like that as well, especially in our industry, the tech side of things. A lot of developers, tech people work remotely in the middle of nowhere and so forth. But very interesting. So I think let's move it up a bit to we've talked about a few things there. I think a lot of key areas. I think the thing that resonates for me is what Mark and what Roosevelt, the way how successful, your project's been. But that's obviously partly because you've got that experience, Roosevelt, in your team, that tech team, whatever we want to call it. But I think, obviously a lot of companies don't have that person, those people. They've got used to a plug and play piece, a plug and play tech, and a few, I'm simplifying this a lot, but, 3 or 4 bolt-ons and various partners, and it sort of works. But then when we start talking about APIs and we start talking about making it work with 180 countries, and, I guess this is more of a question for Mark, and you've sort of touched on it. What would you say to companies that are listening where they think, oh, that's quite a daunting task? We don't have that guy, but obviously, what we're saying, the different partners and different tech platforms like BigCommerce obviously have those teams, but they probably feel quite intimidated by even some of those conversations. What would you say to those guys that are listening, Mark, about, they really want to sort of really explore it, but it is quite a daunting task because they just don't have that sort of those people, that team in their team?
Yeah. Pick partners that have been there and that have done it and that understand it super.
Yeah.
For example, I've been in most of my career. Most of the people that I've hired at BigCommerce in the last kind of 15 months are industry veterans of service delivery in e-commerce, because that is the differentiator. You'd probably be surprised that I'm going to say this, but technology is an enabler. It's not the solution to solve the problem. And many technologies are very similar. And yes, of course, there are differences in some, but it's more about how the technology vendor and the other partners you might have, and the skill sets they have, the experience they have to be able to help you cut the customer on that journey. That's the most important things. If those skills and experiences and expertise are not within any one of your partners, then be very careful about going on that journey. The second thing I would say, it can be broken down. You don't need to go. I've never been a fan of big banging projects and doing everything at once, one single delivery. It's high risk, and so mitigating the risks of project delivery, which actually Roosevelt has done at Recharge. So they're deploying incrementally across countries, testing, learning, the next one. Smart approach, it de-risks it, and you learn along the way and you gather those experiences to make better decisions in the future. So those are probably the two things I would say that you genuinely make the difference more than anything else.
Yeah. No, brilliant. Thank you, Mark. Thank you. So I think we're sort of coming into this episode will air and will be literally a week or so from Q4. in theory, it's the majority of merchants rely on Q4, as most businesses, well, a lot of businesses do, but merchants specifically, obviously preparing for that. We're a few weeks out from that, but I think a lot of people make the mistake where Q4 comes and goes, and then it comes to January, February, and they have a look at the accounts, and it's like, it's maybe not quite gone. We sold a lot of stuff, but the bottom line is pretty thin, and ultimately, it's a little bit challenging out there. In terms of costs and savings and sort of obviously across the merchants you're working with, Mark, and yourself, Roosevelt, as a merchant, what would you say about sort of things that companies should do right now to look at sort of cost saving exercises? What are you seeing that, the simple things that we talk about, here at our agency with our clients, the different routines that they should be doing, different things, that they should be checking. You've talked about there around, doing things in stages. Obviously, you've not got this massive cost, you're breaking it down. But what are you seeing, guys, and what would you recommend to our listeners to sort of look at saving costs and sort of minimize costs over this coming sort of next 3-4 months?
Shall I take that first, Richard? Yeah?
Yes, if you want to go first, Mark, please.
This is a tough question, because if you haven't already made these decisions and we're in now coming towards the end of August, it's going to be difficult to have a big impact in a short amount of time, but let's try and answer it. The first thing is to ensure that your systems stay up through peak. The biggest impact is it on profitability is when you've got the cost, but you've not got the sales. And if something's down and not working and the customer can't check out, you're not generating revenue. So job number one, ensure that it is robust as it possibly can. And there are things you can do with your vendors, for example. So when you're going into peak, when you're going into sale, if you plan certain types of sales, many of our customers are doing flash sales, for example, and short-term, high velocity sales that last for maybe 24 hours or something like that. Have the conversation with your customer success manager, your vendor, to inform them so that they are ready and are ready to expect that. Even in the SaaS world, in theory, you have the ability to scale magically. Sometimes I think customers expect, well, it isn't all magic. It's still IT, it's still infrastructure. It still needs to be planned and provisioned. And the more the technology vendor has a view of what to expect, the better that they can plan for. So, engage and talk to them. Clearly, it comes up every year, the level of promotional activity, and when you do your promotional activity as you go through peak can have a big impact on costs and profitability. And so, learning from, previous years and doing that in the best possible way. This, of course, will be tough in the current economic climate, but looking to optimize that. If you're selling on many different channels over peak, one of the big things that we're focused on is being able to optimize, as I said earlier, the product information for the channel. And you can, and what that can lead to, if it's properly optimized, is a much lower cost per click on paid advertising. Yeah. Typically 10 to 30, even 40% if it's properly optimized. That can have a big impact on cost saving, and that can be done very quickly. We have tools and technologies such as Feedonomics, which helps with this. There are other tools as well. But if you're spending a lot of money on paid digital and it's not properly optimized, I'd go after that pre-peak for sure. Yeah.
I think it's a very quick win, isn't it? The feed piece that I think, we know gets missed so many times, where it's actually fairly easy with the tech that's out there. Obviously, you mentioned Feedonomics. We do a lot of work with you guys on that. But just making sure those titles, descriptions, the extra data that you can have in a feed that usually as a default, it just isn't there. Yeah. The different custom labels based on the different platforms that usually are just not there if it's just sort of out of the box, whereas it's actually quite straightforward. And I know with Feedonomics, you can obviously split test the titles as well. So you're split testing in, say, shopping ads, for example, which again, probably most people listening, I would say 95%, but probably 99% are not doing that. So quite a quick win, but obviously, got to explore that. But yeah, shopping feed's a great one. Yeah, Roosevelt, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I truly can reinforce what Mark brought. I think guaranteeing the operations are working inside the business, but also with the different partners that we have to compose our solution are really key to make sure we don't lose anything during that moment of high season. And in general, it's important that we can leverage data, understand the customer behavior to really target our efforts to be the most efficient possible. That's also a thing that is really important in our efforts to reduce costs, optimization on how we do conversion, if it's working or not, and doing this in a daily basis, in a weekly basis, always reviewing how it is the results for each specific thing, and in our case, in each specific market for each segment of customer is really important to understand those markets, those customers, and be on top of the data to be able to really optimize our marketing efforts.
So you did a lot of conversion rate optimization. So in terms of obviously, Roosevelt, I assume your business is very much reliant on retention and people obviously continuing to use the service. We'll have a lot of listeners with subscription products, and and a lot of I know we've got a lot of clients, as most people have in this industry, that are sort of a lot of repeat purchase, and of certain clients springs to mind. We've got a few clients that have got 200 different stores and doing 100 million online and selling say pet products, for example, which is very much you buy your flea treatment in March because it's getting hot, March, April, and then and every year it rolls round, and there's this fairly quick win to obviously keep those clients engaged, keep those clients, the communication flow with various flows and campaigns depending on your system. But anything you would sort of, obviously your retention for your business must be a huge lever. Any sort of little secret source you can add in to the mix and the episode around retaining some of your clients, some of the things you've been doing? Obviously you mentioned sort of conversion value optimization there and that, but any particular specific things that you would recommend sort of for improving average order values, improving stick rate, retention?
Wow. Yeah, there are a few things we can do. Of course, I don't want to give too much away for our competitors, but I think the secret, again, goes back a little bit to what I said before, and especially in a big business like ours. We always say we have a deliberate global solution, but we want to provide the local experience. That truly makes a difference. It's about the product description, the product title, how people, what is the term that the person uses to top up their phone? It's not top up everywhere. It's different.
Yeah.
And we have to be aware of those differences to make sure we provide an experience that the user feels safe that he can use, because we understand his need, how he talks, how he expects to be served, what are the payment methods he expects to have on his country. So those small things combined make a lot of difference.
So that local knowledge, bringing that in, because I think, got all the days where you can hit Google Translate and sort of cross your fingers and hope for the best.
That doesn't work.
No, I mean, just like I was saying, I was away a few weeks ago, and the differences in just some of the things and some of the, there's like in the UK and a lot of places we use Uber, but out there there's it's a lot bigger. In Asia is Grab, and some of the different sort of wording on the app is quite different to Uber. Now, if you went over to the US and tried to launch Uber, which I'm sure they have, you wouldn't just sort of copy it. It's very, very different. So, the base idea is the same, but ultimately, some of the language terminology, is very different. And I think that's, we see that a lot in the sort of the SEO side of our business. Obviously, it's about 50% of our business is SEO, and that translation piece, that having somebody on the ground that is native potentially. Obviously, it depends on the specific use case, but that's a great one. So I think let's move on to the last couple of questions, guys. It's been fantastic having you on. So I think one for you, Mark. I think obviously we've talked a lot around sort of, I think, more B2B, and And, what is sort of BigCommerce's plan? You've got this B2B, B2C. I think, when I go to your site and look at sort of signing up as a potential smaller merchant, shall we say, you've got to fill the form in. And I think, that's maybe a little bit more challenging for some of the smaller merchants to get over the line. Are you really sort of targeting more B2B now, or what's the strategy there?
Yeah, I mean, yes, we're having a lot of success in B2B, but that is predominantly driven by having a great product for those types of customers and investing in that product. I'll come back to that in a second. Actually, from a marketing perspective, I would say 2/3 to 3/4 of all of our marketing is still focused in B2C. We've been ramping B2B direct marketing for a couple of quarters now here in Europe. And so we're doing more of it, and we plan to equalize that more from a marketing perspective. We're doing both. Still, B2C is 2/3 of all of our customer base in Europe, at least. And that B2B, which is a third, has really been acquired in the last 18 months, 2 years. So we're growing much faster in B2B than we are B2C. Retention rates seem higher in B2B. Our conversion is higher. Our average revenue per customer is higher in B2B because we're targeting much bigger businesses. So the metrics look good in B2B, but our largest customers are in fact B2C. Recharge is B2C. The biggest customer we signed in Q2, another £1 billion in GMV, is B2C. Still, the very largest of our customers, and I think this is the same in America as well, are big multi-channel B2C retailers and brands. But B2B is growing very quickly at BC. 35% up year on year so far. And for us, there's less competition from a platform perspective because you look at all the SaaS vendors, nobody's really focused on it that has any scale. And we're very focused on it. We're investing heavily in the roadmap on it. We'll continue to innovate on it. So
I love it. I love the fact that you're doing, obviously you're doing both, but I think, my background is very much, I had a distribution business, and I think, there's a lot of opportunity there for, platforms like yourself, that there's a lot of, B2B businesses out there that they need specific functionality that you guys have nailed, when we're talking about the different pricing that's required. I mean, there's so many different things, obviously, but, when we just talk about the different, different sort of front ends for different users, I think that just that one use case alone, if you can open up so many markets very, very quickly. Okay, well, thanks for clearing that up. Now, from a personal point of view, Mark, when we started working with you guys maybe about 4 years ago, I have a little sort of, how can I put it? I have a little hobby, which is investing. And I always pretty much invest a few quid in all of our partners that we work with. So I put several £1,000s into BigCommerce shares about 4 years ago. And it's not been a brilliant return, shall I say, to date. What is your prediction for the BigCommerce shares over the next couple of years? Any insights or anything you would say on that?
Yeah, obviously we've just released.
I apologise for this one. You weren't expecting this question, but
no, I get it. I get it. We get asked this. So we've just released our Q2 results. I'd encourage people to go and have a look at those. The company really is in the midst of a transformation at the moment. So if you think about where we came from, originally SMB, moving into mid-market, and then moving towards enterprise, and we've done a successful job of that. But not as quick as many people, many investors perhaps would have liked, I guess. And the transformation we're now going on is really to accelerate the business's move to larger enterprise. So if you look at the way we're marketing, you look at the way we're structuring our teams now, the kind of people we're hiring, it is, like I said, is in e-commerce industry veterans. It's people that come from the enterprise e-commerce space. And we want to go and win that market. I believe it's there for the taking. We have a couple of competitors that are more API based than kind of full featured platform. And, the legacy vendors in that space are dying or slowing down, and, they're not innovating in their roadmaps. And so I think that is the biggest opportunity for BC. If we do that successfully, rest assured, all the other metrics will go along with it. Higher profitability, larger revenues per customer, better retention rates in larger enterprise, which all drive revenue growth. That's our strategy. That's what we're going to go and execute on more aggressively than we have been. I think in the past, we tried to be all things to all people, and we're kind of letting go of that strategy a little bit and saying, no, we're going to be the very best platform for composable architectures in the enterprise, but with a level of simplicity that helps the customers execute that strategy more efficiently.
Well, thank you, Mark. That was very convincing answer. I might even top up. I might have a little top up next month and get a few more. We'll see. Roosevelt. So, what would in terms of what's on the roadmap for Recharge? What could you share with the team that's sort of you're working over the next sort of 12, 18 months that you're allowed to share?
Yeah, that's a good question. We get that a lot. I'll try to share. Well, I can give away not too much, as I said before, without giving our secret sauce. But I think the fundamentals are the same. We have to understand truly what is happening in the market. What is the customer demanding? So the speed of delivering the product. In our case, is a digital product, right? The user gets the code, the credit in his account or the PIN code, and ensuring the connections with the partners are there and are fast, and we can predict and deal with different situations. Even when the partner is not available, we have to have plans for that. So being able to predict those risks, mitigate those risks in advance to always provide a great customer experience with speed as being our biggest focus is what we're most focusing on right now.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I'll be watching from the sidelines and keeping an eye on things. Well, thanks, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. I like to finish every episode with a book recommendation. Mark, do you have a book recommendation you'd like to recommend to our listeners?
Yeah, I am rereading at the moment Good to Great by Jim Collins, which is one of my favorite business books. I think you have to read that book, like most of them actually, you have to read them every few years. It's been 5 years since I read that. So I'm on chapter 3 reading that book. Nice. Classic. Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you, Mark. Roosevelt, what would you recommend to our listeners? Oh, there's so many good books out there, right? I can mention a few. I really like to go back to 2, and I'll give a third. I'll give you 2. The Hard Things About the Hard Things is a really great book. I really love that book. I also like No Rules from the Netflix story. But one that I really like, and I don't hear much about it, is The Madis Effect from Jens Johansson, I believe. It's a really nice story how the family, Mad's family, was to intersect ideas for different fields to innovate. And I read that a long time ago without giving away too much my age. Yeah. And I always bring that to me to try to intersect ideas and innovate, sometimes bring in ideas for a different field to implement in a simple way for another solution. Fantastic. We'll hook up all those 4 recommendations in the show notes. So for the guys that are listening that want to find out more about BigCommerce, more about Recharge, I'll start with Mark. What's the best way to reach out to you, Mark? You can go to our website and request a connection on there. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn or via email, mark.adams@bigcommerce.com. Thank you, Mark. And Roosevelt? Yes, please access recharge.com, easy as it is. And I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect. I'm happy to connect with people. Thank you very much, chaps. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. And I look forward to catching up with you both probably in a year or so, and we'll get you back on and see how a few of these predictions are faring and see where we are with Recharge and the business. But thanks for coming on the show. Thank you, Richard. Appreciate it so much. Bye-bye.
you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you are listening to this podcast, so you're always the first to know when a new episode is released. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you on the next one.